Again, my thanks to internationally known professor and systems scientist extraordinaire, Professor Ian Somerville, for explaining what an emergent property is. I just can't help myself. I absolutely love his accent. And if I could get away with saying emergent property all day, that I would definitely do so. I'm not making fun of him. I just think it's really cool how he says that. So our last topic here is something that's English words, counterintuitiveness. If you have an intuition, it just means that you can make a prediction or you predict the future. You have a feeling that something might go a certain way. Thinking of a goofy example, say for instance, for breakfast in the morning, there was a little bit of milk left in the half-gallon container, but it probably was pretty old and maybe turned a little bit. But you put it on your cereal anyway because you were dying for your cereal. And then now it's lunchtime and you're just not feeling good at all. You probably shouldn't have had that. It's probably what's that's intuition. That's an intuitive process of saying this is probably going to be bad, but I choose to do it anyway. Counterintuitive, of course, is the opposite of that, where all of a sudden there's a result that you really didn't expect. And this goes back to the previous topic of an emergent property. We need to be aware as systems scientists, as innovators, that some systems, while they are emerging, while there are things and properties that are emerging, perhaps there are things that are happening that we never really expected. They're happening and they're counterintuitive. Um, eh, maybe like a scientist, we predict, we have a hypothesis, we have a hypothesis. A hypothesis means that we're above the experiment. We have a hypothesis, we have a guess of how things might turn out, and all of a sudden, if we prove our hypothesis or we can't disprove it, and then we say, hey, our intuition was correct. But if something drastically different happens, like say you're mixing two colors of paint together, and you mix them together expecting to get green, and all of a sudden it explodes. You're like, whoa, that wasn't what we expected. Especially if it's reproducible. In the case of innovation, sometimes we need to be aware of counterintuitive things that we didn't expect, emergent properties that just pop out of not being based on what we saw before. So yeah, in red here, the system may produce unexpected outcomes, and that's fine. We love to be surprised, but we want to be aware that when that happens, we want to be sensitive to the fact that we're being surprised. So what happens is that success in playing the game changes the game. This is one way that we can be counterintuitive. Like, hey, let's do this really, really well. Again, with the case of Henry Ford, he could only make 2 cars a day previously, and then he made 10 or 6,000 cars a day. But of course, it changed the game. Sort of counterintuitively, people wanted different colored cars and they wanted different model cars. This just wasn't a choice before. And it wasn't a choice before Henry Ford built his assembly line. He needed to build that system first. And the number of cars on the road needed to emerge before anybody could even say, hey, nice cars, all 100,000 of them, be great if I don't want to have the same car as everybody else. So everybody uses the same number 2 pencil, but now not everybody wants to drive the same car. So success in playing the game changes the game. So even if you're a fantastic company with a wonderful system and you have a great team and things are just going really, really well, success in playing the game changes the game. There are going to be changes that you may not expect. It may be counterintuitive. Usually, this is sort of the idea of inertia. If you keep on doing the old way, eventually that's going to turn into failure. So tenacity in playing the old game converts success into failure. So if you don't realize, maybe counterintuitively, that there's a new game in town, there's a new emergent property to be taken care of, then you're going to fail. This goes back to our topic, discussion of the Continental Can Company. Or in the case of Blockbuster Video, they just went away. And then events have multiple effects. We talked about the multidimensionality of the fitness club, but when things happen, multiple things happen. I'm not going to spend a month talking about all the things that have changed because of COVID-19. But events have multiple effects, and each with a different time, that should be with a different time lag and independent life of its own. So when we're talking about the time lag of ordering beer in the beer distribution game, you needed to wait 2 weeks, even though you may have ordered 30 cases of beer. It took 2 weeks for those cases to arrive. Or maybe you went ahead and ordered 30 cases of beer and then learned that, just like with the case of Barrel of Oil, no one's buying beer anymore. You're like, oh, well, stop giving me beer, but you had already ordered it. So sometimes these effects have multiple time lags. You have to worry about those as well. So it's a pretty complex thing. It's not something we can sit down and study because, again, it's counterintuitive. We didn't predict it. I have a little example here. It's not too huge. It's not a giant business device, but I like M&M candies. M&M Mars candies are fantastic. Hopefully everybody knows what M&Ms are, and you know that M&M, a package of M&M comes in all kinds of colors, and M&M Mars developed colors for specific holidays. They sort of have the spring colored, they have the Christmas colored, and of course they have the 4th of July colored. Pardon me. The 4th of July colored is the red, white, and blue candies. And that's great, and they're a great seller around the holidays, and M&M sells a whole bunch of M&Ms that are red, white, and blue around July 4th. So the designers, the business people said, hey, you know what? Maybe it would make sense, rather than selling bags with red, white, and blue, maybe we should sell bags with just the colors. Maybe people would enjoy buying, 5 bags of red, 5 bags of white, and 5 bags of blue. And then maybe they could have, depending on how they want to decorate whatever their party is, their 4th of July party, maybe they want to have tablecloths, a white tablecloth, a red tablecloth, and a blue tablecloth, and they have the M&Ms to match. Again, customer choice as far as what emerges. So M&M Mars did just that. They went ahead and they turned on their sorting machine and adjusted their packing machine and made packages so that you could buy just packages of blue. And you can still buy the blues today. You can go to Amazon and buy blue M&Ms in bulk. And that was great, and they sold like hotcakes. And then they made packages of red. Again, maybe there's a reason, maybe even red doubles for Valentine's Day. And then they made packages of white, and it turns out this was a flop. Not no one, but compared to the blue and the red, these didn't sell at all initially. People wouldn't buy them. And like, wait a minute, there's still M&Ms. I assure you that the color of the candy-coated shell doesn't change the flavor. It's not like people don't like the taste. They all taste like M&Ms. And they're like, well, we have a counterintuitive problem. Our intuition said if we package these 3 colors separately, people would buy them equally, maybe for a red, white, and blue setup as I described. And they had the proof. They had the measurement. The blues sold just fine. The reds sold just fine, but the whites didn't sell. So something's counterintuitive. So they, of course, took their systems designers and said, go out and figure out why people aren't buying white M&Ms. And they eventually talked to a whole bunch of consumers, and a lot of these consumers, the majority of consumers, at least in the United States, are women, and the majority of the consumers in the United States are moms. And they said, there's no way I'm going to buy a package of white M&Ms and put a bowl of white M&Ms around my house so that my young children can learn to put white pills in their mouth. In fact, you can imagine as soon as a kid's going to get a hold of a big bowl of white M&Ms, they're going to say, oh, look, I'm taking pills. So it turns out that the white M&Ms reminded the customers they looked too much like small little white pills, whether it's aspirin or Tylenol or Excedrin or anything. They didn't want their young children, again, freedom is nothing if you don't have competence. They didn't want their young children to walk along and see a white candy on the ground, and maybe it's a medicine, maybe it's a prescription, and not a sweet chocolate candy coating. So I got this image from the web. You really can buy white M&Ms. Maybe that's changed, but the original story, the original business case was that this was a huge counterintuitive problem for M&M Mars, and maybe there's just enough customers that don't have kids. And they're like, what the hell? I like white M&Ms. Sure, why not? But at least initially, enough moms didn't buy them to warrant it. So it was definitely a huge counterintuitive process. And again, it's just an example of what works that through. So that brings us to all 5 of the different topics, and I have one more thing for you guys to take a look at, and this sort of integrates all 5 of those things, talking about how businesses need to change, and then these different principles of a system, and this is all integrated, this openness, purposefulness, counterintuitiveness, multidimensionality, different perspectives of problem solving versus problem definition. That, of course, is all integrated into one thing called systems thinking, which, of course, was the title of the book, Systems Thinking. This video is not produced by the book. It's not produced by Professor Garrett Adagi. It's not produced by Ian Somerville. It's by another company who happens to be a business consultant for systems thinking. I think it's a pretty good way to summarize all these things. So I'll ask you to take a look at that, and then we'll be back with more things. All right, good luck. See ya.